Welcome to Killer Women with your host, best-selling author Danielle Girard. And now, Danielle's next killer woman.
Hello, and welcome to Killer Women Podcast, a proud member of the Authors on the Air global network with more than 4 million listeners. I'm your host, suspense author Danielle Girard, and my guest today is Alli Dyer. Alli was born in Tennessee and raised in the mountains of Virginia. She is the author of Strange Folk and Night Songs, and for the last decade, she has worked in entertainment and book publishing. She currently lives in Los Angeles with her family, and we're here to talk today about Night Songs. Welcome, Alli.
Thank you. There it is.
There it is. She's a beautiful cover too. God, if you're listening to us, check
Thanks.
out the cover because there's a lot of symbolism to the trees in the
Yes.
book, right?
Yeah.
And we don't do any spoilers because there's so much stuff I would love to ruin about the end of this book. We're
Yeah.
not going to do that. So before we dig into all the characters, would you tell us about Night Songs?
Yeah. So it's a dual timeline book set in the world of country music, but it follows a young woman living in the California suburbs who, on her 18th birthday, learns that her mother, who died when she was 5 years old, was actually this famous country singer, like think Dolly Parton or Patsy Cline. And she's just inherited her like massive estate primarily, in Nashville. So she travels to Nashville to find out more about her mother and to meet her friends and sort of the friends that she considered family, other country stars that she came up with. And learn more about her story and sort of some of these like packaged myths around her mom's come up and time in the spotlight before she died tragically at 33 of a plane crash. And sort of while she's learning these stories and getting to know these friends, we also get chapters from the mother's perspective where we learn the true story. And we come to find out that there is a curse in this family, in this bloodline, where all of the women die tragically at 33 of some accident. And so we're following sort of these two women's lives as they grapple with this curse. And then as sort of our present day storyline, as she becomes closer to 33, she can feel the curse sort of invading her life, and she goes on this quest to figure out how to break it before her time runs out.
And first, she has to sort of figure out who her mother actually was, right? Because
Yeah.
it turns out that, Belle Powers was maybe a pseudonym and not her real name.
Yeah,
Um,
or a pseudonym of a pseudonym.
yeah, seriously, right, exactly.
Yeah.
So I'm so curious because I thought that one of the most sort of compelling parts of the story is this sort of idea that it was, it's Rhea is the daughter, Belle's
Yeah.
daughter, whoever Belle is, but Belle's daughter.
Yeah.
And then the curse is, it was Rhea's grandmother who also died at 33.
Hmm.
And so basically, when you've already seen two of your sort of, grandmothers or your mother and your grandmother die at 33, there is this sort of like you can just imagine what it would be like. And 33 is not old, right? I mean, I don't know.
Right.
I hadn't figured out anything about my own life as far as
Yeah.
so
Right.
I feel like it's this, so there's this incredible like sort of weight that happens the closer, and we see that with Belle as well, that the
Yeah.
closer she gets to 33, the sort of more, she feels like, and so it builds this sort of very natural, like you kind of would go a little nuts imagining the sort of like, you have 5 years left, and then you have 4 years left, and then you have 2 years, and then 6 months.
Yeah, like the existential dread of what's coming. Yeah.
Right. And feeling like there's no way. So when I always am curious to know sort of because I feel like very few books sort of start the way that they end up. And so I'm curious
Yeah.
what elements of this are different. I mean, again, don't spoil it for us, but like what was this sort of, or maybe you're one of those people who sort of really has plotted it all out.
No.
I always people are amazing because I am not that person, but sort of what were the elements that were there originally and what sort of has changed?
Yeah, so originally I had a few things from my first book that were left on the cutting room floor. So one of them was this anecdote of this like Appalachian folk magic practitioner. That's like what my first book is about. It's about Appalachian folk magic. And I had read this anecdote from him that there's this superstition in Appalachia that if a mother goes through a big trauma while she's pregnant with a baby, the baby will be born with a birthmark in the shape of that trauma, sort of. So this practitioner had a birthmark in the shape of a truck on his somewhere on his body, and his mom had actually been hit by a truck and survived
Wow.
when she was pregnant with him. And so that was like a little thing in my head.
I love
And
it because yeah, because she's the,
it comes into play. Yeah.
yeah.
I don't know if we want to give it away, but
Well,
it
that's, I
does
mean, right, we don't need to, but it is,
it
I
does
mean,
come
that's
into
very much
play in
in
the
the book.
book. And then I also was thinking about I'm very close with this family, where all of the men in the family seem to die very young and sort of these tragic deaths that are all very different, but all sort of these like tragic accidents almost. And so I thought about what it must be like in that family. To sort of have that hanging over your head. And even something that's more accessible, like if all the men in your family die of heart attacks really
Right,
early,
right.
like, what are you, that's like in the back of your mind as you're getting older and you're like making decisions about your health and your lifestyle and that sort of thing. And so that was also something I was interested in exploring. And then 33 is, the Jesus year. It's like the year that Jesus did everything that was important and then he died.
Okay.
And so so that's an important number. I mean, I love also, 33, it feels poetic and but I really wanted to I feel like a lot of Appalachian like folklore and magic like it sort of incorporates Christianity and the Bible as like sort of part of its mythos. So I wanted to incorporate that as well. And then I love music history. I love Dolly Parton. I've dressed up as her for Halloween like for years and years. And Patsy Cline and Loretta Lynn. Patsy Cline died around the same age in her early 30s. She actually saw her death coming. She was having dreams of her death coming, and they really inspired me, and like sort of Dolly Parton's like creative genius I think doesn't really get highlighted that much. Like she's constantly writing songs. She's written like hundreds, maybe thousands of songs. And they're constantly coming to her, and sort of like that creativity and that genius I wanted to like show on the page, really celebrate it. Because that's not always the first thing you think of when you think of these like country queens are like these musical geniuses, but like that is also a part of them.
Well, especially the women, right? I think in some ways women are sort of, and it's one of the things that we see sort of Belle, you know, struggle with in her, her early marriage to, a much
Like,
older,
yeah.
yeah, more powerful or more established country western star. But she, women end up getting, especially of course, historically, and maybe less now, although I guess we could probably argue it. They get sort of pushed into this sort of like mold where this is where you have to be and this is who you are instead of being
Yeah.
able to sort of explore their art, their artistic adventures. And Dolly too, like look at how we, sexualize Dolly and I mean, look at how she, maybe she did that also as a way of sort of like, you know, early in her career getting, the sort of
Oh,
start.
yeah. I think she's always been in control of her image, and really wielded that in a really smart way. And I think that was another inspiration for me was like, if you go to Dollywood, which was like Disney for me growing up, she has this really, really intentionally packaged sort of backstory. And, the sort of one room cabin that she grew up in is like recreated in the theme park. And her old church from back home is recreated in the theme park. And so you get sort of like this like humble, beautiful, like mountain upbringing. But I thought about like what is like the real story behind that. And it's totally like her prerogative to like keep that story to herself. That's her life story. That's like something that she gets to keep private, and it's like something sacred that she gets to keep inside. But I wanted to like sort of, it was a fun creative exercise. I was like, I got to explore what that could be.
And it has to take a lot of vigilance and strength to keep your story private, especially in today's world, because we
Yeah.
don't really let anybody keep their story private. Particularly, I don't think we let women, we really feel
Yeah,
like if somebody is famous, we feel like we deserve to know them down to sort of every detail, which
totally.
is
Yeah.
incredibly invasive and
Yeah.
unrealistic. So,
Yeah.
when there's this idea that also when Belle is pregnant with Rhea that she thinks she's having a boy and therefore she's like, perfect. This is
Yeah.
broken the curse because I'm not having a girl, and of course
Yeah.
Rhea is very much a girl. So,
Yeah.
it's funny. I just recently interviewed Lauren Nosset. Do you know that name?
Yeah.
Indie Darling. And so
Yeah, yeah. I
there's this
saw
kind
that
of
book. There's some parallels for
yeah, there's
sure.
some
Yeah.
I loved both of them. They're very different.
Yeah.
But there are some sort of wonderful parallels in this sort of, and of
Hmm.
course I'm out, I grew up in Northern California and I'm in Montana. So for me, the whole world of Nashville and
Totally.
Appalachia and all that is so different. So
Yeah.
it's fun to have gotten to be in there twice here in the last really like a month. It's almost so it's very close.
Yeah.
But so when you write a book, are you knew, of course, it sounds like you pulled all these sort of a fun thread. I love the idea that something ended up on the floor of your last book,
Yeah.
the cutting
Yeah.
room floor. I
Right.
always like when one book is done, anything that went into that book is like, completely in ashes. So the fact that you could pull
Totally.
something out of it is really wonderful. And that you're pulling things from real life, like like the
Yeah.
gentleman with the truck on his body. Is
Hmm.
that sort of how the first book worked too? Are there strings that be from real stories?
Yeah, well, see, the first book is like very heavily inspired by my mother's family, and like the lore behind that. Like my grandmother practiced Appalachian folk magic in the coal fields, and like really, it comes from a lot of, it's like sort of a patchwork of stories from my family. Like my great grandfather came from moonshiners, and stuff like that. And that all sounds very cliche, but I wanted to like show a more nuanced portrayal, like in a modern setting,
Right,
of a
right.
family that has that kind of history, mixed with a murder mystery and sort of like a mother-daughter coming of age at the same time, in Appalachia, sort of coming back home. And that sort of dovetails with some of my own history with my family. So that was like deeply, deeply grounded in my mother's family's history, with also a lot of invention.
Right, which is
Um,
the fun thing
but
about it.
this, my dad is from Tennessee. My dad's family's from Tennessee, rural Tennessee. And so I grew up, going to Nashville a lot, going to Dollywood. His grandparents lived in Nashville. And so this was sort of like my dad's side of the family, like exploring that heritage a little bit. But also just like loving country music and growing up with that and exploring that part of it.
And there's some, I don't, it's funny because I don't want to call it really supernatural, but there are some elements of the
Yeah.
story where you do sort of wonder if how much which I think is a very real thing for people, right? How much of the world
Yeah.
are you really in? How much of this is real and how much of it is imagined? And
Yeah.
that's a really delicate, fun,
It is. And I think, I actually have gotten notes in the past, especially on this book. It's like, you have to pick a lane, like it's got to
oh,
be magical or not. And that's not my experience of the world. My brother sees spirits, and whether or not I believe that those spirits are actually there, there's like meaning that he gets from them that is something that I share in, and so it's like things are never going to be that cut and dry, especially if you like come from a family that has like some of this stuff
Yeah,
sort of
yeah.
in its blood and sort of and you're open to the possibilities. So that's why, yeah, I wanted to sort of meld them.
And I feel like it's one person's like I think when we're inside a character, it's her reality, right?
Yeah. Oh,
It's
that
how
was like
she
so important
perceives.
to me.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's so since we're on the subject of, feedback, oh, right? How do you, how do you deal with that? Because this is your sophomore book, which everybody talks about being this like, how do you find yourself sort of navigating I mean, there's sort of haters, right? You're like, it's a book of fiction. Take it for what it is. Like, I'm not reporting on, World War II. This is a whole invented world. Uh,
Yeah.
so how do you manage that? Because I think that's a really hard part of being an author.
From like the feedback, like editorial feedback or like
No,
feedback
I mean,
after.
at least I feel
Oh,
like an editorial feedback can be really hard. I'm not going to say it isn't, but that at
yeah.
least feels collaborative. It's the
Yeah.
people that just like after it's done say
Oh, yeah.
that kind of feedback. The sort of
Yeah. It is hard. I don't know. I think I do have like pretty well-engineered boundaries. I would say like emotional boundaries. I'm pretty internally motivated person. And so I want to feel like if I open the book to a random page and I read that page, like it still feels like a world that I understand and something that I'm like proud of having made, you know? And I know what it's like to be on both sides. And so I know it's like important to give feedback and to like receive it in a
yeah,
constructive way. But I also really respect the time and sort of the vulnerability it requires to like put yourself out there and make things.
right. It's like
Um,
Brene Brown, you don't get to say unless you're in the arena, right?
yeah, yeah. And like you should be so lucky that people don't like the book because at least they read it.
Yeah, you're right. Exactly. I mean, honestly, like, right, some of the best-selling books get the ratings are like 3.5 to three.
Totally. Yeah, Goodreads is like you should never read the Goodreads reviews. But it's great that there's like this online community of people who care enough about books that they're like posting about them and talking about them. And I'm glad that like that like fertile of a community exists. It's cool to have that level of engagement.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. But it is, yeah, it's a funny thing. So now, yeah, your bio says that you're in sort of also the world of book publishing and entertainment. So
Yeah.
what's that? I mean, so what's that like to be on both sides? That's interesting. What do you
Yeah,
maybe what do you do and how does it to be on both sides?
Yeah, so I work for a film and television production company. I live in Los Angeles. And I do like book packaging. A lot of people probably won't be familiar with that. But it's, you know, you have an idea for something that could be a great movie or a TV show, but you want to make a book first because it establishes the IP, and so we sort of take these ideas and make them into books, and then we also have a film and TV team.
And you hire authors to write the books. I've had a
Yeah,
few people that I've had a few friends who've done those kinds of projects. Yeah.
yeah. So then I follow the book throughout its life, like at the publisher. And so I do see many different books go through that life cycle. And so it can be hard to know so much
Yeah.
becoming an author yourself because you know the implications of things like they can't obscure, they can't like
Yeah.
deflect or lie to you, like you know what's going on.
You're like, yeah, I know what that means. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
interesting because I feel like when your first book is coming out, you do have this sort of like it just feels like sort of like you won a lottery and you're like, this is it.
Yeah.
I've arrived. And yet if you
Yeah.
already knew the business, you'd be like, yeah, oh, maybe. Right.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, that's why you have to like enjoy things when they feel like they're going well, you know, knowing that it's fleeting and it's you're gonna move to the next step and there's always going to be something new to tackle. But that's what makes it so fun is like constant change and like For me, the writing itself is what I love the most, just the act of it.
Yeah.
And so, like, publishing the book and all of that stuff is just like maybe helping me to continue to keep writing.
Yeah.
But yeah, the writing itself is
I
what
think
I'm
it has to be. I think if you're
yeah.
not somebody who enjoys that is 98% of the job, right?
Yeah.
If you don't enjoy I say this all the time because I think we have a lot of aspiring authors who listen to the show and they're sort of like, what's the trick? And I think the trick is that if you could quit and do anything else, you should.
Yeah.
Because I think if you don't have like, I have to do this, then
Yeah, I because I'm also work in film and TV, I talk to a lot of really young people who are just getting into the industry, and if they tell me that they actually want to write, but they're just sort of hedging their bets by like maybe trying to get a corporate job at the same time, I just tell them like you're young, you will never have more free time than you have right now. Like just go and try to be a writer, see what happens. If you can figure out a way to support yourself during that time and do that, then just do that first and see what happens,
yeah,
because you can't actually pursue both and be like super successful at it when you're really young, and it requires like all of your attention.
yeah, yeah. No, it's so true. It's so true. Can you tell us a little bit about what you're working on now?
My new book that I'm working on. Oh yeah, it's I've been really inspired by like these big sort of sprawling almost crime novels, but that have like a big heart at the center of them, like all the colors in the dark.
I love Chris Whitaker, yeah.
Yeah. So I'm working on something that I hope is sort of like that. Um, that like still has like a slight speculative edge. And still has like a little bit of like that crime bent to it as well, but really it's like sort of a sprawling story about someone's past and present sort of intersecting, and what comes out of that basically.
And so how do you balance? I mean, now you also have a little one because
Yeah, I have a 1-year-old.
we see the little crib behind us. So
Yeah.
or behind you. So how do you sort of with how has that changed your life? I mean, it's a different
Yeah,
thing to
it's
write with
made
kids.
it, yeah, I mean, it's totally changed my writing life.
Yeah.
I used to get up first thing in the morning and just like write in bed. That was like my thing. And I used to go on these like 3-hour walks where I would like listen to audiobooks and get ideas for like what I was working on and stuff. So yeah, I don't get to do any of that
Right.
anymore.
It changes, yeah.
Yeah, so you just find the little nooks and crannies where you can get time, and I still have a lot of time to like think and stuff. There are still like the quiet moments in the day where you can think about things, and I still think about the book all the time. It kind of lives inside me, but I am figuring out a way maybe where I can like take a chunk of time soon and really work on
Yeah.
the book and finish it because it's been very, very slow going.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
which I think that makes so much sense to me. And there is sort of do you subscribe to the idea you said you talk about sort of like the book is in your head kind of all the time.
Yeah.
So are do you sort of subscribe to the idea that if you the sort of more you stay in it, the easier it goes, sort of if you can touch it every
I
day.
think so. I
Yeah.
think so. Yeah, I could. Yeah, I mean, I work on a lot of different projects for work as well, so I've got like a lot of stories in my head, but this is the one that yeah, it's like living inside me. And if it doesn't do that, then it's probably like not the right thing. Yeah, and I actually had a different version of this book that I had totally outlined and started writing before I had a baby. And then after and like some other stuff happened with family, and then sort of after I went through all of that, I realized like it was too misanthropic and it was too dark. And I was like, oh, I want to do something that has like redemption and light at the end of it. Like that's important to me, I think, with all stories that I want to tell is like that's the only way it's going to live inside me is if I feel like the characters are going to have that arc. Otherwise it like sort of it doesn't penetrate the skull as
It's
well.
too much. Yeah,
Yeah.
it becomes it's too dark. I understand that a lot.
Yeah.
I think it's a fine balance to because it has to have enough lightness and darkness to sort of balance. the process. So
Yeah.
you out sounds like so you outlined, did you then sort of outline again in this
For
new?
this most recent book.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I've gone through many different like configurations. And I did for this second book too. Like it looks totally different from the first draft that I drafted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Some of that is just a process of you don't know what it is about really until it's all the way out, right?
Yeah, or I'll like it, but other people don't. So I have to absorb that and really
Editorial.
figure out how to make it work for other people. Yeah.
The editorial feedback, yeah, that's a
Yeah.
big one. That's a big one. And do you tend to sort of write, do you write the whole draft and then let your editor look at it, or do you let her look at it in chunks?
Yeah, I usually write the
Very
whole
thoughtful.
thing and then let people see it. Yeah.
Yeah. So when you were developing, one of the things I love about Night Songs is that there's this incredible community. There's some, men in the story too, but it really is an incredible community of women surrounding Bella. Particularly, I mean, they surround Rhea too when she shows up, but it was sort of those are Belle's people, and I feel like they all meet at this sort of like it's like a home for girls, and
Yeah.
they call it
Well, and
mom.
like young women,
Yeah.
like you unmarried young women used to like live in,
Yeah.
like these boarding houses sort of, or there was like an older woman there. We've seen it in movies and shows
Yes, no,
before,
it makes, yeah,
Yeah.
I love that that's sort of where how she, she starts and where she ends up, and they
Yeah.
come from very, they come from very different, demographics and backgrounds, and
Yeah.
I'm always curious when you sort of create a cluster of characters. Was it, is there a thing? Was there like, how do they emerge in your brain? Are you going to feel sort of like you're writing and you're like, okay, now here's Hess and here's, or are you sort of, when you map them out, are you mapping out all these different characters?
Yeah, I think well, Hess was there first because she becomes a very significant
Yes.
character. And yeah, it's more like a collection of like different women I encountered in country music. And so I wanted to show that as well. I didn't want it to seem like a monolith of just like this one type of, singer like Loretta Lynn or Dolly Parton, the country girl who makes it big,
Right.
and wears all the glitz and, because that's just one type of country
Right.
singer. I also wanted one of the women is like a musician and
Yeah.
she's like a killer in the studio like she and so that's also based on like another other women from history and so I wanted to like show a spectrum of experience in the music industry. One's like a fashion person and
Yeah.
I
I
love
love that.
fashion and I love that fashion's like a big part of music and like
Yeah.
that world and how you express yourself and so, yeah, I wanted to show like a spectrum of different experiences in country music and sort of all the different elements of it. And yeah, I just like love the idea of like the found family, like the female friendship, and then how, you get to see the daughter in the present storyline like sort of become like embraced by like this family that she built when she was young.
Right. And I love how they sort of give her different parts of Belle, right?
Yeah,
Some people hold back a little bit more about some parts,
the truth. Yeah.
some of them weren't around for parts of Belle's sort of life, right?
Yeah.
They came in and out of her career.
Yeah.
So no, it's beautifully done. It's a really, really fun
Oh,
book.
thanks.
Well, we are going to be giving away a copy of Night Songs either on our Killer Women podcast on Instagram or over on Facebook at Danielle's Killer Women. Allie, tell us and Dyer Dyer. Tell us what's the best place to find you online and follow you and see what's going on next.
I'm probably most active on Instagram, so you can find me there. I also have a website, but yeah, I guess Instagram is where I post
And
the
your
most.
handle is
I think it's like Alli L Dyer. If
okay.
you if you you know type in Alli Dyer, you'll see me.
Yes, right. We'll find you. We'll find you, and
Yeah.
we will tag you also. But again, and also for those of you again who are listening, go look at the cover of Night Songs. And I actually really appreciated getting a chance to read this sort of in close conjunction with Indie Darling. So
Cool.
many wonderful stories about incredible women, and it
Yeah.
does make me want to learn a lot more about Dolly. And I've never been to Dollywood. I want to go.
It's super fun. It's like right in the Smoky Mountains where she's from. So yeah,
It's definitely on the
highly
bucket list.
recommend.
Okay, okay. Everyone, thank you so much for joining us today on Killer Women with Alli Dyer, and we will see you next time. Bye.